The open road at night can feel endless. Headlights cut through the darkness. Mile after mile of empty asphalt stretching ahead. Most nights are uneventful, just the hum of the engine and the whisper of tires against pavement. But every so often, a driver encounters something they can't explain. Something that stays with them long after the trip is over. Tonight, you'll hear two true ghost stories, told by the men who lived them. People think the most dangerous thing about trucking is falling asleep at the wheel or getting caught in a snowstorm. But sometimes it's what gets in your cab that you should be worried about. I learned that one August night in Nevada, and I'll never forget it. I'd been hauling produce from California to Denver, taking the long route east through the desert. It was hot as hell during the day, but by the time the sun dropped, the temperature had fallen fast. The desert night air had that dry bite to it, the kind that makes your skin prickle. Around 11 p.m., I pulled into a small rest area to stretch my legs. It wasn't much, just a cracked asphalt lot, two flickering streetlights, a row of vending machines, and a restroom building. The place was empty, not a single other vehicle in sight. I got out, walked a few laps around the truck, and was about to climb back in when I noticed someone standing near the far end of the lot. A man, tall, thin, wearing a dark jacket despite the warm night. He wasn't moving, just standing there in the shadow between the two streetlights. I hesitated. Long-haul drivers get used to seeing weird folks hanging around rest stops, drifters, runaways, people looking for a ride. Sometimes you help, sometimes you don't. It's all about your gut feeling. This time, my gut told me to get in the truck and go. But before I could climb in, the man stepped forward into the light. He had sharp features, sunken eyes, and a strange stillness in the way he moved. Heading east? He asked, his voice low, almost a whisper. Even though we were 30 feet apart, I didn't like it. But against my better judgment, I said, yeah. He nodded slowly. Mind if I ride with you? Just to the next town. Now, normally I say no outright. Company policy, personal safety, a dozen reasons. But that night, I don't know. Something about him made it hard to refuse. Like my mouth answered before my brain could stop it. All right, just to the next town. He climbed in quietly, sitting stiffly in the passenger seat. No bag, no water bottle, nothing. I pulled onto the highway, the tires humming against the blacktop. At first, we didn't talk. I focused on the road, letting the hum of the engine fill the silence. After a few miles, I asked his name. He turned his head slowly toward me and said, Eli. No last name. I nodded and asked where he was headed. East, he said. That was it. The more I glanced at him, the stranger he seemed. His jacket looked old, like 1,972nd old, faded and worn at the seams. His skin was pale, not just from the dashboard lights, but the kind of pale you see on someone who hasn't been in the sun for a long, long time. We passed a green highway sign, next services 42 miles. That meant at least 40 minutes before we see the next lit up exit. That's when Eli finally spoke again. You've got someone riding with you. I glanced at him. What? Not me, he said, turning his eyes toward the sleeper cab behind us. In there, I felt the hairs on my arms stand up. The sleeper was empty, locked from the outside when I'm driving. I forced a laugh. Pretty sure there's no one back there. Eli didn't smile. He just looked forward again. I drove in silence for the next 10 miles, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. Every time I checked the mirror, I half expected to see movement in the darkness of the cab. Somewhere around mile marker 214, the air inside the truck went cold. I don't mean cooler, I mean freezing. My breath came out in faint white puffs. The AC wasn't on. Eli spoke again. "She's behind you now." I gripped the wheel tighter, my eyes fixed on the road ahead. "Who?" I asked, my voice more defensive than I meant it to be. But before he could answer, I felt it. The faintest brush against the back of my neck, like cold fingertips grazing my skin. I slammed on the brakes, the truck lurching forward. Eli didn't move, didn't even look startled. I threw the truck into park, turned in my seat, and yanked open the sleeper curtain. Empty. I sat there for a long moment, breathing hard, my heart pounding in my ears. When I turned back to the passenger seat, Eli was gone. The door was still closed. No sound of it opening, no rush of night air. Just the seatbelt hanging loose where he'd been sitting. I drove the rest of the way to Denver without stopping again. Didn't eat, didn't sleep until I was done with the haul. A week later, at a truck stop in Utah, I told another driver about it. An older guy with 35 years on the road. He got real quiet, then said, "Eli? Yeah, you picked up a ghost, son. He's been out there since 2079, when he and his wife were killed in a crash near mile marker 214. Folks say he's still trying to warn drivers before they meet the same fate." Driving at night isn't for everyone. You get used to long stretches of blacktop with nothing but your headlights cutting through the dark. Sometimes it's peaceful, other times it feels like the night is watching you. This happened about 7 years ago, somewhere along I-80 in Iowa. It was late November, a little after 2 a.m., and I was running behind schedule because of a storm earlier in the day. The skies had cleared, but the wind still whipped across the open fields, rocking the trailer every so often. I'd been at the wheel for 9 straight hours and figured I'd pull into the next rest area to grab a coffee from the vending machine and use the restroom. Eventually, I spotted a sign, "Rest area, 2 miles." When I got there, the place was almost empty. One old sedan was parked under the far light, but I didn't see anyone inside. The building itself was one of those small brick ones restrooms, a couple of picnic tables outside, and a row of vending machines humming in the cold air. I parked near the edge of the lot, left the engine idling, and climbed down from the cab. The wind hit me instantly, sharp enough to sting my ears. As I crossed toward the building, I noticed movement near the picnic tables. A woman. She was standing perfectly still in the shadows between the tables, wearing what looked like a long gray coat that brushed her ankles. Her hair was long and dark, and it swayed slightly in the wind. I slowed my steps. "Evening," I called, trying to sound casual. She didn't answer, didn't move, just stood there, her head angled slightly down, as if she was looking at the ground. I felt uneasy, so I kept walking toward the vending machines. The coffee one groaned to life as I fed it some quarters, the sound way too loud in the otherwise silent lot. That's when I heard it. Footsteps behind me. Slow, deliberate, crunching on the gravel. I turned, expecting to see her coming toward me, but there was no one there. The space between the tables was empty. I glanced around. The old sedan at the far end of the lot still sat under the light, unmoved. The truck idled where I left it. No one else in sight. Trying to shake the feeling, I grabbed my coffee and headed toward the restroom. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed faintly. I was alone. I just finished washing my hands when the motion sensor light in the far stall flicked on. It cast a shadow on the tiled floor, tall, thin, unmistakably human. I waited, expecting someone to step out. No one did. The light in the stall clicked back off. I left the restroom fast, deciding maybe I'd just get back on the road. When I stepped outside, I froze. She was standing next to my truck. Same gray coat, same long hair, her face still hidden. She was on the passenger side, one hand resting lightly on the door handle. "Can I help you?" I called, my voice sounding sharper than I intended. She didn't answer, didn't even turn her head toward me. I started walking toward the truck, my boots crunching against the gravel. Halfway there, the wind gusted hard, and her hair lifted just enough for me to see her face. It wasn't pale like I expected, it was gray. Not from makeup, not from shadow, gray like stone. Her eyes were darker than the night around us. I stopped dead in my tracks. She opened the passenger door without looking, though I know I locked it before going inside. She climbed in slowly, her coat dragging against the step, and disappeared into the cab. My instincts screamed to run, but my truck was my livelihood. I forced myself forward, every step heavy, until I reached the driver's side. I climbed in, slamming the door shut and locking it again. The passenger seat was empty. No sign she'd ever been there except for one thing. The faint scent of wet earth filled the cab, like freshly turned soil after rain. I drove out of that rest area without looking back. Didn't stop until I reached the next fuel station 40 miles down the road. When I told another driver about it a few days later, he went quiet. "Finally," he said. "You've been on I-80 long enough. You should have heard the story. Woman in gray coat. Died in a wreck near that rest stop back in the 82nd. People say she waits there trying to get a ride home, but home isn't anywhere you can drive to." For truckers, the road is their workplace, their home, and sometimes their nightmare. The stories you've just heard weren't urban legends. They weren't secondhand tales passed along in truck stops. They happened. And for those drivers, the memories still ride shotgun every time they take the wheel. So the next time you find yourself alone on a dark highway, keep your eyes on the road. And maybe, just maybe, don't look too closely in your rearview mirror.